CRYPTEWORLD, mass economic modeling, game and multi-use real-life applications. Among the vast complexities of mass economic modeling, either for game or real-life applications, function set, analysis, and live on-demand manipulation with pre-programmed interactive simulations. Respective to the mass economic model for doing cities, countries, worlds, we have a system to understand what can be done at an espionage level. This is basically built from an understanding of what can be done, understanding medical trends respective to diseases. If we're looking at what's generally perceived as an espionage angle, spies, saboteurs, and, well, this can be a foreign or domestic, independent, industrial espionage applications by small entities or culminations and collections of entities. Basically any combination you can imagine could occur. So in this scenario, basically what we're going to do is cold relief medication removal from the shelves. As the cold relief medication is removed from the shelves, more people are going to get colds and flus. The spread pattern is going to dramatically increase, and productivity of companies is going to go down. As we closely monitor the areas respective that are affected, we can also ascertain an understanding of overall performance loss reduction based upon other statistical information available, so that we can compute an actual tendency in productivity loss, which will translate out into a change effective into the stock market. When we're looking at utilizing this type of software situation, we have a more live, on-demand understanding of how people can do mass manipulations literally anywhere in the world. There are various different ways that you could do this. You could literally have espionage agents. You could have your own groups of anarchist-style saboteurs that would go in and literally raid and remove cold shelf from market areas. Now, the optimal way to be able to do this is to infiltrate areas of government. For instance, prosecutorial areas, areas that make policies and laws respective to coming to decisions to come up with a phony scenario that sounds logical, but in effect the real root item of what they're doing in effect has a financial motivation. In fact, the financial motivation also has to have various adjustments, because it can be a foreign investment, it can be a domestic investment, it can be an independent industrial espionage investment. So regardless of what the source is and those variances, computing these type of variances are very important, because as we deal with different types of viruses and more types of viruses, our mass economic model is changing. Now, what's interesting is at many levels, this kind of concept is something that many people have looked upon as general knowledge, common sense. But now we get to look at things in a brand new way, at high speed, and introduce it literally to everybody. So now every real-time strategy gamer, where part of his game is also dealing with a mass economic model or a scaled economic model, we can have a conveyance of this type of information in a very hands-on interactive situation. CRYPTEWORLD, mass economic modeling, game and multi-use real-life applications. Among the vast complexities of mass economic modeling, either for game or real-life applications, function set, analysis, and live on-demand manipulation with pre-programmed interactive simulations. Respective to the mass economic model for doing cities, countries, worlds, we have a system to understand what can be done at an espionage level. This is basically built from an understanding of what can be done, understanding medical trends respective to diseases. If we're looking at what's generally perceived as an espionage angle, spies, saboteurs, and, well, this can be a foreign or domestic, independent, industrial espionage applications by small entities or culminations and collections of entities. Basically, any combination you can imagine could occur. So in this scenario, basically what we're going to do is cold relief medication removal from the shelves. As the cold relief medication is removed from the shelves, more people are going to get colds and flus. The spread pattern is going to dramatically increase, and productivity of companies is going to go down. As we closely monitor the areas respective that are affected, we can also ascertain an understanding of overall performance loss reduction based upon other statistical information available, so that we can compute an actual tendency in productivity loss, which will translate out into a change effective into the stock market. When we're looking at utilizing this type of software situation, we have a more live, on-demand understanding of how people can do mass manipulations literally anywhere in the world. There are various different ways that you could do this. You could literally have espionage agents. You could have your own groups of anarchist-style saboteurs that would go in and literally raid and remove cold shelf from market areas. Now, the optimal way to be able to do this is to infiltrate areas of government. For instance, prosecutorial areas, areas that make policies and laws respective to coming to decisions to come up with a phony scenario that sounds logical, but in effect, the real root item of what they're doing, in effect, has a financial motivation. In fact, the financial motivation also has to have various adjustments, because it can be a foreign investment, it can be a domestic investment, it can be an independent industrial espionage investment. So regardless of what the source is and those variances, computing these type of variances are very important, because as we deal with different types of viruses and more types of viruses, our mass economic model is changing. Now, what's interesting is at many levels, this kind of concept is something that many people have looked upon as general knowledge, common sense. But now we get to look at things in a brand new way, at high speed, and introduce it literally to everybody. So now every real-time strategy gamer, where part of his game is also dealing with a mass economic model or a scaled economic model, we can have a conveyance of this type of information in a very hands-on interactive situation. Obviously, AI is now in the fray of setting up this custom software situation that will just basically become part of generalized scientific logic and pretty much integrated into every type of real strategy game situation where people have to deal with city management. Of course, there's going to be a way to obviously adjust this for whatever type of occurrence or event. You're going to be able to either activate them or deactivate them. This, of course, has been done in the past with gaming, where in many cases you have to deactivate certain features in order to get more efficiency. And this has been due pretty much to chip limitations. And now that's going to change, by the way, with the advent of all of the new styles of chips coming out. The more extreme areas of adjustments of events will deal with things such as introducing more complexities of more viruses, and then, of course, integrating into the scenario pandemic situations. This is also designed effectively to have multiple pandemic options at the same time, perhaps 13, perhaps 35, even more types of viruses that can go pandemic. So you could have a cold and flu style virus that is a pandemic item and then end up having literally dozens of serious variants, items that are tied to that genetic viral tree. But we can also have more into this. We can have breakouts of other types of situations that can also be incredibly explosive, volatile, such as Ebola, other new custom combinations of items that have been basically absorbed by certain styles of diseases, such as COVID, for instance. It has an absorption factor where it absorbs properties of other diseases that it runs into that, in theory, can become incorporated. These are tendencies that some people have noticed. This, of course, means you have to plan for the possibility of what could happen with these combinations, and this leaves a large theoretical area of simulations that can occur. And again, we can effectively utilize AI to be significantly assistive in dealing with these types of scenarios. These types of scenarios in general have excellent resources because we have a real cold relief medication removal from the market. We have the data available to rework and look at in a new way, with the understanding that we have real life situations where people were saying, you can't do this, you're going to kill a lot of people. What happens if a pandemic hits us? And that's exactly what happened. So now we've ended up with the situation in real life where we have a death toll that basically is comparable to Vietnam. Here's 60,000 plus people dead in a very short period of time. We're talking in a 2 to 3 year period. And this is primarily tied to the fact that the spread pattern of the diseases was dramatically increased. This number solely is connected to the removal of effective cold medicines from the shelves. Now, respective to the different methodologies of manipulating the model, we'll get to explore vast areas of differences. Obviously, the most practical solution for dealing with cold medication that was removed from the shelves is to go with the sheer facts that parties were told that there was no scientific basis for their activity and that they were basically gambling that if a pandemic were to happen, that we would be looking at a death toll, a variant increase that would be comparable to war. And it happened. So we've got that. That is basically incompetence. So you have various levels of legal modeling. So at your judicial level, where you're having your judicial modeling, you'll be able to effectively deal with large-scale mass models and understand which prosecutors and which lawmakers involve themselves in various forms of practices that would have to be prosecuted, because the law states that the parties have to be prosecuted regardless. Now, whether they're a foreign spy intentionally doing it, whether you can even prove that, these are all variances respective to the model scenario. But the underlying bottom area is that parties are still prosecuted for criminal incompetence. There's no escaping that. That's the absolute minimum in the scenario, because that's the way the law structure works. And it's something that as time goes on, people, the public, they won't tolerate people basically causing mass murder because somebody wants to involve themselves in some kind of grandstanding event or secret scenario where they're going to be making money off of manipulating stocks or facilitating an activity for other parties that want to do so on a mass scale. Also encompassed into the vast diversity of this situation deals with large language models and multi-agent situations. This means there's a vast complexity of addressing of different types of language analysis. This means that people don't have to be talking technical talk. And this applies to the scope of any subject category. So you have people that could be doing layman's talk, and the language models are going to be able to interpret. This, of course, is crucial for both accuracy and for future learning. This affords different people the ability to use AI, which is very important as the world is now more competitive than ever, and we literally have a tactical table pressure to put as many citizens to work utilizing AI as possible, literally in multiple areas simultaneously. So we're talking about new forms of mass computative power that's going to come into the hands of each and every citizen. The average adult having a minimum of at least 5 computers that are all AI capable and or running AI. Then connecting them to much larger frames brings about even larger scenarios. Again, the language models have the ability, the way many of them are made, to do mass language interpretive science. So this means that you can have all kinds of people dealing with all types of script scenarios involved in creativity because it's designed to do that, because there's a lot of demand for creativity. So basically encompassing different forms of communication styles, and this would include mafia style code talk, modernization, whatever it is. There's literally no limitations here. So this means that the integration of AI with mass model structures means that we have a vast, powerful tool system that's now literally coming to gaming for creative character creation, entertainment purposes. But this has, again, the technology has a mass duality capability. We'll be able to use it for various types of tactical scenarios, law enforcement scenarios, medical scenarios. Literally, there's no limitation as to what you'll be able to do with these types of mass model items. Now, for the purpose of speed and whatnot, we're talking about multi-segmented scaled type items so that you can have more efficiency respective to the limitations that we still do have with chips. I'm going to mention some of the more exciting points here is that people are going to be looking at this as an advanced tool mechanism. This means you're going to have gamers looking at how do they manipulate the stock market. Let's have fun, right? This is going to be a great learning experience, as many people will be exploring and learning various styles of investment techniques. And this is, again, what I would call a small aspect area, because we have a full understanding of global applications, literally worldwide, where this can be useful. So we have a very powerful learning tool that is beyond comprehension coming into the hands literally of children. Literally, the children will now have the power of having not just oversighting, but having the creative collective power of every great person's every category. The best scientists, the best doctors, the best tacticians, the best lawyers. Regardless of what the category is, it is on demand as an automatic reaching feature. There's an important understanding of the logging aspects and modification aspects. The very earliest model cog segments that I was working with more than 25 years ago were encompassing displacement factors, people that would be displaced in estimations that were far-reaching. I'm talking about understanding that 50 to 80 million people would lose their jobs in 30 years from automation and AI. So into this was an understanding of what these displacement factors are and gripping a better idea of how to have people make a smooth transition into continuing to be productive. There's a lot of other additional aspects. For instance, working with full genetic variant capability tendencies. This is something that I was working on that seemed to be very vast and large, and I couldn't even talk about it with people because they would just get a headache. But basically, this is an area to understand who and what we actually are. And this is important because you need to compute things like creativity, ownership, residual understanding, evolution of future residual understanding, evolution of future contracts, understanding the pace of fairness, and how to stay on the cutting edge, how to make long-term projection understandings to be able to produce far more attractive and fair contracts. So into this, again, it's a no limitation situation, but you have to gear it properly. You have to facilitate your AI, which means you have to be able to do what I was doing. You have to trim down. You have to keep a true core understanding to the core. Definitely for larger systems, if you're going to be operating certain styles of true core, you can't necessarily hand those out to anybody. However, you can have people access them. So there's different ways of applying applications for oversighting, and that's where a lot of the work is being looked at right now with a lot of AI companies to understand how to create multi-agent oversighting to be able to make sure that people don't abuse the technology. I'd like to talk more about residual rights and creativity rights and understanding all of these different variant zones, but it's very deep. It's actually very large. There's a lot of little subcogs that go to all this to assemble a proper system. And I have stated before and encouraged people in industry to say that we need to get together and buy into the technology so that the industry itself owns part of AI technology. This will afford more control and a lot of advanced modeling to understand the future. But unfortunately, I haven't been running into many people that were very interested. I would say that in mind that a lot of reasoning is people didn't want to talk about things. So people aren't going to remember subjects where people were trying to mention things and engage when they had no interest in the topic. And that's unfortunate in a way because it would be helpful to me to be able to harvest people's interest, convey to people the importance that AI is actually a more valuable tool to protect your residual rights, to protect contract development, to protect the future of creativity. There's a lot of ways that that can be implemented. Another useful tool in this is to be able to have a segmenter, an automatic segmenter, to be able to break down different forms of information that might be in confusing context where repeatedly information is addressed, but it needs to be assembled and organized. And breaking this down and turning it into proper segments with an auto segmenter capability with AI is crucially important. Life improvement and life enhancement is a crucial area of AI and mass economic modeling as well. Among the most important areas is to understand, up to now we've had a lot of people, they always want to talk about the little things that you can do, and many of these basically are a waste of people's time. They might seem like fun, sometimes there is some fun to them, but essentially in the large picture, what's important is to get people being productive and building actual assets and getting a new minimum standard permanently locked in to guarantee that the average person's labor is always valued. Because we currently have a situation where people's labor has been grossly devalued. And a lot of this has to do with there not being a balanced mandatory plan for people to have the most basic skills instilled in them. And this is something that you can quickly look into by basically looking historically at what human beings are. This effectively means you can go back to 1750 and understand the average 12 to 14-year-old had the basic carpentry skills to build small 2-bedroom houses quite efficiently. Something in 2 months, definitely 6 months to pretty much have a project completed, which could get evolved over the course of their entire life or could be sold. These were base skills that people had to have. Without having the base skill sets, you basically would die. So it's not a joke. So when we're looking at restoring the logic of our civilization, we have to understand that the 38-year longevity of people living in 1750 had a generalized minimal carpentry rating of building small 1-2-bedroom structures at ages 12 to 14. And these are basically not hard skills to obtain. And our system is malfunctioning because we've removed those skill sets from the teaching platform. And it's crucial to put them back into the teaching because this puts in base building skills. So parties with a 38-year longevity in 1750 would have about a 30 small home output for a lifetime and be able to still do other things, subsist, succeed. Today, now we have people who are expected to work 45 years. We're expected to work more years than people even lived in the year 1750. 45 years of work today versus a longevity of only 38 years. So there is an ethical problem as to slavery. And what is slavery? What is a fair pay for people for a fair day's work? Fair hours pay for fair hours work? What is a fair ownership accomplishment and asset growth? And this is where our modern society has gone completely haywire, and we have to overhaul it. It's one of those things where we have to do it immediately, or our entire civilization is going to disintegrate. It's going to crumble. People will lose all of their rights. They'll lose all creativity rights. They'll lose all productivity rights. All we will have is pure robotic slavery. So into this, the solutions and understanding how all of this applies to mass economic modeling is the base logic core of the evolution of these skill sets is encompassed into the base AI mass economic modeling system, as there is an afforded array of characters with basic simplistic learning skills that basically are instilled within the model structure. Today we have interesting skill set structures that, again, all of these things are incorporated into models. But it's important to understand that you have people that don't seem to really understand different types of jobs that people do. For instance, people that are involved in trucking. You know, you're talking about, some people think, well, that's a very easy job to learn. That's not an intricate job. How does that work? In a nutshell, if I'm to nutshell things the best I can to move us forward, it's a job that is tremendous responsibility. You are responsible for enormous values of merchandise that are moving down the road. You are living in a high-stress environment each and every moment. Any in-town driver would tell you that in fact it is a very high, constant stress-related job. So understanding that, yes, people that involve themselves in being managers, being responsible for cargo, and living in a forced environment, a no-choice environment of high stress, this definitely deserves lots of respect. So hopefully that's enough of a nutshell for people to get a base idea, because we also have other diversity aspects of different educational values. But again, we've lost touch because today's economic output of the original colonial 12 to 14-year-old from the year 1750 with the 38-year longevity would be looking at the 45-year work schedule of achieving building basically 480 homes. 480 homes. Well, obviously this means that most people would be pretty much wealthy. If you could build 480 homes, you'd have to be wealthy. But something has sprung. We've gone haywire. And we have devalued the most primitive skills of survival, which are carpentry and other items. And bait and switch has given people a falsity of items that are telling people that you have to do 2, 4, 6, 8 years, 10 years of college to be able to make enough money to afford a decent house. This is insanity. This is mass entrapment in our social structure. And reconfiguring this social structure is something that could be a lot easier. And again, mass economic modeling affords us new ways of looking at every aspect in a rapid manner. This means basically, among the things that I explored decades ago was the ability for AI to come online and discover mass corruption, discover people that are involved in conspiracy at levels that are mind-boggling, people that are criminals, people who have violated the Constitution. For instance, I will mention there are many people that are not including law or constitutional law when they're making their language model systems. And this can be problematic. I can only assume that some people came up with understanding something of what I already discovered, which is there's a certain enormity of difficulties because law itself can be corrupt. That is a problem. I've mentioned that before. But we also have additional factors that what are you going to do if you have a product where people are going to instantly discover that they're being victimized, and the AI, if you ask the right questions, is going to provide you with a full map layout of where all these people are, who these people are, and a complete in-depth, detailed scenario to be able to prosecute all of these people for the crimes that they're involved in. This brings about an importance of the long-term research that I've done, where basically we have a situation that at a global scale we have to implement mass AI implementation. There's no choice. There's 300 million people in this country, and if you just add up China and India alone, you've got 2.8 billion people, as opposed to the 300 million people here. It's just the math on it. We have to immediately do certain things. So I did deep evaluations to understand what is the transitional understanding of what must occur at a tactical table, what really must occur in order to make everything come out and actually work. And it's frightening, actually, because neither one of the current major recognized candidates in the media is equipped for it. They don't have the mindsets. These people are not equipped with the right mindsets to be able to implement such a policy, yet the tactical table says we must implement this policy and series of mass changes. Because a lot of these, they don't have a clue what to do. Now, part of the problem in dealing with these areas, as effectively we're working with mass model structures, is that true core understanding. You don't want to screw your model up, at least I don't. So I don't want to screw my model up with a bunch of tainted material. So that's why I did extensive sorting as to which cogs are of value and which cogs are poison. Because poison is a huge problem. Mentally, when we look on our society as a whole, if we look at it nationwide, and we can go city by city by city and do breakdowns of how everyone is in different sectors and areas, there has been a mass poisoning of mental thinking processes due to other people previously who invented false laws, invented false policies, because they were manipulating people for their personal gain, for their personal purposes, which in many situations was actually criminal intent. This is part of the problem, is that we have parties who had criminal intent that involved themselves in many activities. And now super purity truth core AIs discover this rapidly. It's a snap, it's rapid. that it can discover all of this and come up with the aspects of all this deep understanding, from deep learning extensions to say, yes, here it is, and all of a sudden you're going to have this vast, huge printout that starts out being 70% to 90% full of clarity about what you need to do, and now you need to sort through it and basically eliminate some of the ridiculousness. It's basically figure you're going to take out a pair of scissors and probably chop out 2/3 of the material right away as not being necessary. This comparatively to some of the models that are running right now, I would say the largest, biggest models, OpenAI's, etc., because they're going to proceed with certain processes certain ways and certain safety concerns, and you're going to end up with all this extra material that can be reworked down to a condensed level. Now, to cover another point of mass modeling here is that we've talked about the poisoning in people's minds and how it occurred, and then we also have paranoia factors. We have people that have paranoia instilled in themselves, in their lives, because they think that somehow they've done something wrong and that AI is going to discover them and they're going to be prosecuted. This is part of the invented elaborate mental illness factor from long-term mental poisoning. We have a vast array of people that basically are more likened to comparison to cult members than to productive, individually free, colonial societalist. So understanding the evolutionary cycles gives us an afforded measurement capability that's crucial for scaling and utilizing various options respective to this area. If we are to address more in depth the problems with a lot of poisoning, is we've got a vast amount of paperwork that's been invented the wrong way. Government functions in a completely wrong mindset. And this is part of the problem. It's difficult to change something when somebody's engineered a complete system of falsities that are designed to protect people that are criminals, who basically want to institute a progressive policy of slavery that becomes more and more brutal, more and more demanding, to get it to a point where they're saying they want all the productivity from people's lives and have people end up with nothing, basically, and say, oh, here, take this small puny retirement check, why don't you go die in a cardboard box quickly someplace, so that they can move on and get closure from their mass engineering of the theft of people's very lives. And true core AIs don't tolerate this. So this is something that, I've worked on for decades. So reworking and understanding how poison has been inserted, basically, the mental poisons, and go through and basically rework the material, and then come up with what are the practical options that we have to immediately engage ourselves in to be able to set mass recovery and mass restoration of productivity back to each and every citizen. So the physics of what I ended up designing are completely different, and this is how I make my mass models. My true core situation is completely different. This is why I probably had the most accurate models ever invented, because the material is sorted properly. It's removed the frivolous. It's removed the poison. It's removed the falsities, the disinformation, and goes forward with the purity, most practical, best tactical table forwardness that can be utilized. So, some of you might have noticed that I'm a presidential candidate. I'm doing transition work. I'm trying to do best we can to get some kind of effective transitions going, because legally I don't have to withdraw. I have candidates that think they can step on my neck and destroy archives and artifacts, and the Constitution says you can't do that. By the way, these people are facing death penalty charges. This is not a game. This is not a game. So they have lots of people that are helping to support their illegal activity. And basically I've been presenting, for 2 years, evidence. And you look at this evidence and you go, look at this enormous violence. These attempted assassinations, these are undeniable type of items. And they're all recorded in 3D, basically, and SAR. That's 70% of So all of these people, their positions are all locked in. They're recorded for all time. There's basically no escape. There's no escape for these people. And they're struggling. This is part of the big struggle. This is why we're seeing such madness occurring. You have people that are flipping out. They're just totally flipping out, and they're desperate. And they're hiring all kinds of people to help them come up with various scenarios so that they can try to maintain a grip on society, because society is starting to awaken and realize that something is obviously wrong, and we've been ripped off. When people look at the building scenarios and the shock of realizing, as you interview and you talk to people, and they go, my output is 480 houses for 45 years of work. Yeah. And they're saying, well, then I would never need to work more than 5 years in my life, and I could retire very comfortably. And I'm like, yeah, pretty much, if that's what you want to do. Of course, a lot of people always want to be doing something because in whatever it is, being active is interesting, and that's a lot of what would be restored to people's lives with these systems. And again, this is all encompassed into the mass model system. So whether it's a gaming model or more extended model for real life situation, you can do simulation versions that are stepped down, so to speak, scaled back, right in your laptop. But the larger models obviously have to have mass interfacing. There's modifications yet that are still going to have to be done. But my research, effectively, I see a tracking system. We're almost there. If I had $5 billion right now, that would go a long way to really increasing the area of my AI research to rapidly achieve certain goals. If I were to achieve the White House more efficiently, again, a lot of things would happen. Mass change, my transitional design sequences are dramatically different than anything else that anyone else is doing. My restoration projects, basically the design that I have, politically, becoming president, I would have absolutely no problem paying off the national debt in 3 to 3.5 years. That wouldn't be a problem at all. So, keep in mind, I have an IQ of 240. I have good days, I have bad days. Bad days, my IQ's less. Good days, my IQ's more. So the accumulative factor of basically having this ultra-high IQ, understanding vast, more topic and category areas than other people even know exist, afforded me the ability to work on the construction of one of the best, I believe probably the best mass model structure ever designed. The only thing else that'd be comparative is going to be at governmental levels. And it's likely that my material probably is influencing their material. as to where the partnerships are going to go, where things might happen. That's still not locked in yet. There's different options there. So from a business sense, those options are there. But as I speak to you, each and every option that I'm talking about, you can look upon it as though everyone that you meet, including myself, is just another character in this big, huge, massive model. And there's some people that would grip that right away. They'd say, oh, yeah, well, we live in a mass simulation. And I don't really necessarily agree with the opinion that it's a mass simulation. I would explain things different, and some people would still say you're still talking about mass simulation, but there's a lot more to it than that. But so it's a large true core system understanding. So my time is getting close. I've got some other items to do. I have a lot of phone calls to catch up on. So that's going to conclude what I have this morning. I want to thank you very much for your time. My name is Michael Crosby, and yes, I am also running for POTUS. Okay, so I'm going to go another extended session here. Basically, there are a lot of other different aspects when you're looking at the mass model and how to work with the different mass model. You have a lot of different creativity areas. People just love to get creative. I mean, part of gaming is adventure. Yeah, let's do adventure. So with my research, I'm also basically a spiritual physicist, which means that I have to understand these vast complexities mathematically of who and what we all are. And someone says, now you're talking simulation again. Well, I don't want to agree with you. There's way more to it than that.